So what is the problem? If we can all do the same thing,
Do we actually do it?
it's who will actually do it. What does it take to actually do that?
Discipline.
Absolutely.
Habit.
Habit, discipline, consistency. How much income is coming in is not the problem. The problem is, what are you doing with the income you receive?
Welcome to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we rethink money, ditch the system, and rediscover what it means to truly thrive well. I'm Tricia Miller, mom of 7, financial coach, and founder of ThriveWell. Around here, we believe wealth is more than numbers. It's about freedom, stewardship, and building a legacy that lasts. If you're ready to challenge the norm and take back control of your financial life, you're in the right place.
Welcome back to the Bankless by Design podcast. I'm Tricia Miller, and today we're picking up right where we left off in our conversation about Parkinson's law. Last time we talked about the human problem, the fact that expenses tend to rise to meet income and sometimes even exceed it, and that more money does not automatically create more margin. So today, I want to bring in the richest man in Babylon because it gives us a very practical starting place. If Nelson Nash is showing us the problem, the richest man in Babylon helps us see the first steps towards solving it. How do we begin to create margin? How do we start fattening the purse? And how do we learn to tell the difference between necessities, desires, and casual wishes? Well, we're about to find out. So let's jump right back in. I wanted to take this opportunity to go into the text of The Richest Man in Babylon. We've mentioned that book several times now, and I feel like this is the perfect place. Nelson is showing us the problem, and he's saying, look, you've got to whip Parkinson's law here. This isn't a critique. It's just not what his book is about, right? But he doesn't give us practical how-to tips. So in my own journey, I read The Richest Man in Babylon first, and it had such an impact on the way I looked at my finances and growing wealth. It changed the trajectory of my life in so many ways. And then when I came to reading Becoming Your Own Banker, all of a sudden it was like you ever had that moment where the bells start ringing? Oh, it's all just starting to make sense. It's all clicking because they were so in alignment. One helped me understand the other. So for that reason, I want to help the person who may be struggling with how do we get there from here, paycheck to paycheck, to getting to the place where I can actually put into practice what Nelson's teaching in this book. So I want to share a little bit of The Richest Man in Babylon. Are you ready for this? Have you read
Absolutely.
it, Jonathan?
I've listened to it on audiobook, but I've not read it. So I need to get the text back in front of my eyes. I've tried the audiobook because I'm in the car so much and I enjoy them to an extent, but words on a page, man, I need it. So
I am totally with you there. And I don't know what that is. I cannot do audiobooks very
love
well.
podcasts, but yeah.
Right. There's a difference. I don't know what that is. I think reading is such a lost art. And I know we're all busy and so many times don't have time for it, but I think we have to make time for it. Just like anything, it's a discipline. But even, I've got to underline, there is something about, I remember even my professors in college saying, how do you take notes? How do you study? There'd be some kids who don't take notes. I was a note taker. And I think there's something about paper and pen that helps me process in my brain in a way that I can't do with Audible. So Here's my book, all underlined. Here we go. All right. So to give a little context, this book was actually written by George Clason in 1926. So here we are 100 years later, and I love this book. So it's an older book. It's a classic. I would say it's one of those top books that if you ask wealthy people, books that influence them, this is amongst the list, usually. It's just got such good nuggets of wisdom that have stood the test of time. That's why the book is 100 years old and still being printed. But the other thing that's really fun about this book is that it's a story form. So it's just kind of a fun book to read. It's not like just doing math on the page. So the setting is in Babylon, and it starts out here, and I'm not starting even in the beginning of the book. I'm going to actually talk about there's 5 laws of gold and there's 7 cures for the lean purse. Well, hear that, 7 cures for a lean purse. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're struggling with a lean purse. You're purse is empty, your wallet has got nothing but dust in it. It's set where this is about Babylon and good King Sargon. He's returned to Babylon after defeating his enemies. And the royal chancellor comes to talk to the king. And he says, after many great years of prosperity brought to our people, because your majesty built the great irrigation canals and the mighty temples of the gods, now that these works are completed, people seem unable to support themselves. So he says the laborers are without employment. So you've kind of got this picture of the king back in the day. He's done all of these things to build his empire, to make it wonderful for the people. And yet he's still seeing that people are struggling to get by. He says, but where has all the gold gone that we spent for these great improvements? Demanded the king. And he says, it's found its way, I fear, into the possession of a very few rich men of our city. Some things just don't change, do they? No. It filtered through the fingers of most of our people as quickly as goat's milk goes through the strainer. How's that for a picture? Anybody feel that way? Just goes right through your hand so quickly. Now that the stream of gold has ceased to flow, most of our people have nothing to show for their earnings. Sound familiar? So the king asks the chancellor, he says, why should so few men be able to acquire all the gold? And the chancellor says, because they know how. So is it possible that there are just some principles, some laws of gold that will work like the laws of gravity every single time, no matter who you are, if you could just get a hold of those laws of gold? And the answer is yes. The problem is it takes this discipline. It takes this human behavior to actually do it. But gold will work the same way for everyone. That's the idea here. He says, so the king demands, why should not all the people learn how to accumulate gold then and become rich and prosperous? He wanted all of his people to be rich and prosperous. He says, quite possible, Your Excellency, but who can teach them? So they wind up going to the richest man in Babylon, thus the title of the book. And they find Arcad. He is the richest man in Babylon. And they come to him and they say, so why have you become so wealthy? And he says, by taking advantage of opportunities that are available to all of the citizens of our city. So it wasn't like he had something special. He's saying, everyone can do this. And he said, had you nothing to start with? And he said, no, my only thing was I had a desire for great wealth, but I had nothing otherwise. He asked him, he says, can it be taught? And Arcad says, it is practical, Your Majesty. That which one man knows can be taught to others. Okay, so they decide, to just summarize here briefly, to set Arcad about teaching this to the rest of the men of the city. So this is what he does, and he teaches the 7 cures for a lean purse. And it's the first 2 that I think are directly related to Parkinson's law. So that's what I wanted to share with you. He says, the first cure, start thy purse to fatten it. So he starts speaking to one of the man further back. He says, what do you do to earn your bread? And he says, I'm a meat butcher. Okay. I do buy the goats the farmers raise and kill them and sell the meat to the housewives and the hides to sandal makers. Because thou dost also labor and earn, thou hast every advantage to succeed that I did possess. So Arcad is saying, then you have a skill in which you have to that you possess that you can use to grow your wealth. Okay. And so he goes on to the rest of the students and he says, you can see that there are many trades and labors at which men may earn coins. So they all have a skill or something that they can do where they're earning money. It's not like you have no money going through your hands at all. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he turns to a humble man who had declared himself an egg merchant. He says, if you select one of your baskets and put into each morning 10 eggs and take out from it each evening 9 eggs, what will eventually happen? He says, it will become in time overflowing. Why? Because each day I put in 1 more egg than I take out. Arcad turned to the class with a smile. Does any man here have a lean purse? First, they looked amused, then they laughed, and lastly, they waved their purses in jest. Because, yes, they all had lean purses. All right, he continued, now I shall tell thee the first remedy I learned to cure a lean purse. Do exactly as I have suggested to the egg merchant. For every 10 coins thou placest, I got to read all this old English. For every 10 coins thou placest within thy purse, take out for use but 9. Thy purse will start to fatten at once, and its increasing weight will feel good in thy hand and bring satisfaction to thy soul. deride not what I say because of its simplicity. Truth is always simple. So he goes on to say, I will tell a strange truth, the reason for which I know not. When I ceased to pay out more than 9/10 of my earnings, I managed to get along just as well. Wait a minute, let me back up. So he says, I told you I would tell you how I built my fortune. He said, this was my beginning. I carried a lean purse and cursed it because there was naught within to satisfy my desires. So he had the same problem. But when I began to take out from my purse but 9 parts of 10 I put in, it began to fatten. And so will yours. This seems so simple, doesn't it? So what is the problem? If we can all do the same thing.
Do we actually do it?
It's who will actually do it. What does it take to actually do that?
Discipline.
Absolutely. Habit, discipline, consistency, right? So, like I said, you go play that cash flow game. It doesn't matter if you're the janitor or you're the doctor. How much income is coming in is not the problem. The problem is, what are you doing with the income you receive? Do you have the discipline to set a portion of it aside to pay yourself first, essentially, in what we might say is more modern day language, right? Yeah. Set something aside first. What do we typically do? We typically get our income, we pay all of our bills, and then we tell ourselves we'll save what's left over. This is actually flipping this on its head, right? It's setting aside something for ourselves to grow wealth with first. It's capitalizing savings first. But what does that mean? Now I've got to live on less, and I've got to find a way to do that. But here's the interesting part. He says, now I will tell a strange truth. The reason, which he does not understand. When I ceased to pay out more than 9/10 of my earnings, I managed to get along just as well. I was not shorter than before. Also, before long, did coins come to me more easily than before. Surely it is a law of the gods that unto him who keepeth and spendeth not a certain part of his earnings shall gold come more easily. Likewise, him whose purse is empty does gold avoid. So, isn't that interesting? It's almost like if I learn to have this discipline of setting some aside, suddenly gold finds a way into my purse more easily. I think that discipline transfers to other things. Maybe? I don't know. So that's the first cure. I want to get into the second cure. And the second cure is control thy expenditures. So first one, set your purse to fattening. Okay. The second one is control thy expenditures. They go hand in hand, don't they? Some of your members, my students, have asked me this. How can a man keep 1/10 of all he earns in his purse when all the coins he earns are not enough for his necessary expenses? Well, how do we deal with that? So Arcad tells his students, yesterday, how many of you carried lean purses? All of us, answered the class. Yet thou do not all earn the same. Some earn much more than others. Some have much larger families to support. Yet all purses were equally lean. Now I will tell you an unusual truth about men and the sons of men. So this is, again, we're talking to human behavior here, aren't we? This is a truth that's common to us all. It is this, that which each of us calls our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we protest to the contrary. There is Parkinson's law. There is nothing new under the sun. Confuse not the necessary expenses with your desires. Each of you together with your good families have more desires than your earnings can gratify. Therefore are thy earnings spent to gratify these desires insofar as they will go. Still thou retainest many ungratified desires. All men, here's a truth, are burdened with more desires than they can gratify. Because of my wealth, I'm going to rephrase this because it's old English. Because of my wealth, you think I gratify my every desire? 'Tis a false idea. There are limits to my time. There are limits to my strength. There are limits to the distance that I may travel. There are limits to what I may eat. There are limits to the zest with which I may enjoy. I say to you that just as weeds grow in a field, wherever the farmer leaves space for their roots, even so freely do desires grow in men whenever there is the possibility of their being gratified. Thy desires are a multitude, and those that thou mayest gratify are but few. In other words, desires grow like weeds. And as long as we make room for them, those desires will be there. I forgot
how good this book is.
This book is so good. I'm telling you, it is so just simple truth.
Yeah.
but like let it hit you between your eyes because it's so true. It's the wealthy man can't satisfy all his desires either. We just have this idea that somehow we're going to get to a place where desire is going to be fully gratified. And so we keep looking for that. And it's never satisfied is the idea here. So we have to at some point say, and sooner rather than later, clearly, we have to say, I can be satisfied here because, and this is where this gets even better. Study thoughtfully your accustomed habits of living. Herein may most often found certain accepted expenses that may be wisely reduced or eliminated. Therefore, engrave upon the clay each thing for which thou desirest to spend. So write it down. Select those things that are necessary and others that are possible through the expenditure of 9/10 of your income. Cross out the rest and consider that but a part of the great multitude of desires that must go unsatisfied and regret them not. So we all need to get out our income, take only 90% of it, write down the things that we want or desire, and cross off those things that are unnecessary to keep that within 9/10 of our earnings. And that's just such a practical thing to do. But it means we've got to cross off some of those desires. We've got to have the self-control, the self-discipline to be able to do that. What comes to mind when I'm saying this to you, Jonathan? I'm just curious.
Oh, I know. I'm just thinking about myself and all of my own spending habits and what I can cut out and what I should cut out. I'm just running through the cycle in my brain, honestly. Yeah, it sounds so simple, but it is what you learn. Like the one maybe good thing you learn in personal finance in high school is, pay yourself 10%, set aside 10%. It's a good rule of thumb. I am not great about it. I need to be much more disciplined on and rigid in doing that, and that it's not an option. It is, law. But also I think about how few of us probably actually do. And that, what Nelson says here is that your economic standing is judged against everybody else. So if you can even just start to do the simple things that all of us struggle to do, you're putting yourself that much further ahead, and
yes, and I would say there's no magic about 10%.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. If
you have to start with 5 to start, then start with 5. Start with 3. I don't care. Make a habit and then increase it as you're able. Some of us should start at 20, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just get started. Yeah. And I'm not a huge advocate of the whole idea of, cut out your cup of coffee that is not the way to grow wealth. So don't mishear me. So, this is kind of the Dave Ramsey thing. And I will say the one thing about Dave Ramsey followers, if they start to become their own banker, they have the discipline needed. So insofar as that's good, right? This is not how to grow wealth, but this is just how to get started to get some margin in your life. Because without this, you'll never get to the place where you can grow wealth. You've got to start. You can't start with an empty purse. You've got to start somewhere. So this is like, just getting a little traction going. But it's a habit that should continue for our whole lives daily.
I was going to say the exact same thing that, start where you can, and I'm speaking to myself by saying that, hey, if I think 10% is unreasonable right now, do 5, do what you can and make it a habit and be disciplined in it. And it's just wild. Throughout our conversation, I'm just thinking about all the different ways that this applies to life and just how important it is to become disciplined and how much I need to become disciplined in my just daily habits, routine. I'm thinking about my routine and how important it is to just start a good routine to even build these then other healthy habits.
Right. What do we want life to look like? It's really up to us. We all have the same 24 hours a day in front of us. What are we going to do with that? And are we going to build something with it? Or are we just going to just keep pedaling through life with no aim and no goal? If we do that, we'll hit that aimlessness every time, right? So I just want to finish up a little bit of this because it's just about one more page where I've got a bunch of underlines that were really good. So he says, touch not the 1/10 that is fattening thy purse. Let this be thy great desire that it's being fulfilled. Keep working with your budget. Keep adjusting it to help thee. Make it thy first assistant in defending thy fattening purse. In other words, use the budget not as a tool to dread, but as a tool to defend the greater goal. Upon saying this, one of the students, wearing a robe of red and gold, arose and said, I am a free man. I believe that it is my right to enjoy the good things of life. Therefore, do I rebel against the slavery of a budget which determines just how much I may spend and for what. I feel it would take much pleasure from my life and make me little more than a pack-ass to carry a burden. To him, Arcad replied, Who, my friend, would determine thy budget? I would make it for myself, he responded, protesting. In that case, were a pack-ass to budget his burden, would he include therein jewels and rugs and heavy bars of gold? Not so. He would include hay and grain and a bag of water for the desert trail. The purpose of a budget is to help thy purse to fatten. It is to assist thee to have thy necessities, and insofar as attain thy other desires. It is to enable thee to realize thy most cherished desires by defending them from casual wishes. I think that is a key thing right there, right? And really, truly, there is a principle that we always do that which we desire the most. So we have to get clear with ourselves. What is it that we truly desire? Is it our most cherished desire, truly, to grow wealth and leave a legacy for our future, to be able to have time freedom? Is that really what we desire, or are we giving it away to casual wishes in the moment? So then we have to question, then what is our truest desire? And make a distinction between those two things. So, like a bright light in a dark cave, your budget shows up the leaks from thy purse and enables thee to stop them and control thy expenditures for definite and gratifying purposes. So for those things that are way more important, that have much greater priority, that budget is designed to defend those against the casual wishes that are going to be here and gone. And truly, I know I've said this on this podcast before, but I'm going to repeat it again here because it really was the thing that helped me in my mind when I started investing in real estate. I decided that I would rather say to myself, you are the owner of property that is going to build something for the future, rather than spending my money on a nice pair of shoes. Would I rather be an apartment owner or a shoe owner? Because the difference was gratifying for a moment, right? I'd have a cute pair of shoes. They're going to be worn out in 6 months or a year, or they're going to go out of style. But the purchasing of property was a greater desire because of what it was going to do for me and my future. And I made that clear distinction between the casual wishes of today and the cherished desires for the future. And it turns out that it's not that far into the future, right? Like I'm enjoying today the results of those properties. It didn't take years, but it is a more long-term sustainable wealth builder than buying a pair of shoes that are thrown out tomorrow. So silly analogy maybe, but that's what I came to. And I kept that in front of my mind. And that's the idea here. Keep those distinctions in your mind. So when we talk about a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity, go down that list. What are those things that are just casual wishes versus the most cherished desires, the things that are priorities, the things that are going to matter in the long term? And here we are right back to think long range.
Yep. It's all full circle.
Full circle. And so this is the kind of thing I was reading prior to coming into becoming your own banker. And I remember reading Parkinson's Law and all of these different things. And it was just the light bulbs were going off in my head. Oh my goodness, this just rings true because essentially Nelson is warning us about the human behaviors. The Richest Man in Babylon is giving us some very practical how-to. And then Nelson is also, when you get to this place where you're able to start becoming your banker, he's giving you a warehouse of wealth of where to store this, where to actually put this 10% that you're capitalizing, to set it aside where it is going to continue to grow. And in fact, the very next cure is make your gold multiply. So it just dovetails so nicely. And so I couldn't help but share this today as we were talking about this. And I hope that this might be just really instructive for somebody who's really just struggling paycheck to paycheck. Take the courage. You have to be courageous and to actually govern yourself before you can govern your money. and then you can get there. And you have to stop being in the paycheck to paycheck cycle. But this is the only way to get there. So it's no get rich quick, easy answers, but it's simple if we could just discipline ourselves to do it.
For those human behaviors.
Absolutely, 100%. Jonathan, anything you want to add to that? What are you going to practically take away from this in your own personal situation? Let me ask it that way.
Well, I'm going to pull The Richest Man in Babylon back out, give it another thorough reading. And I've always struggled with finding a template for a budget that works for me. And fortunately, you sent me one recently. So I'm going to be working on that myself and working through my list of necessities and desires.
I think, honestly, I want to do the same thing. It's time for me to go back through it. It's just something I think that should be a regular habit. But yes, let me encourage you and all my listeners. We can talk about this on the podcast, and you can turn this podcast off and forget about it, right? It is an entirely different thing for you to get a copy of either one or both of these books and sit down with them and pull out a pen and take 30 minutes or an hour and take a few notes and make yourself some to-do lists and underline and really okay, how do I apply this to me? We've got to do that. So just want to encourage people, listening to a podcast. I really appreciate people listening to the podcast, but my goal is to encourage you to go beyond it, to really take these things and educate yourself so that you can find real freedom. Because that's what you're going to get in the end of the day with it. So, all right, next week, let's see. We're going to go back to becoming your own banker, and we're going to be walking through Nelson's next human problem, and it will be Willie Sutton's Law. So we're going to have to do a little research on Willie Sutton. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that this brought some real value to you. And if it did, would you please like it, subscribe to it, share it with somebody who also might need to hear this. And, we'd also love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. So please share a comment and I'll be happy to respond to that. And until next time, I hope you have a great week. And thank you so very much for listening. Jonathan, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you as always for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we're done with the system and we're doing money differently. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs it, and visit us at banklessbydesign.com to learn how you can start living bankless by design.